Civil rights complaint to be used by a pro se prisoner under 42 U.S.C. section 1983 or under Bivens versus 6 unknown federal narcotics agent. United States District Court, Western District of Kentucky. First thing to notice, Bivens versus 6 unknown federal narcotics agent. Like, what kind of title is that for a lawsuit? Like, they didn't know who was responsible. It wasn't in the police report. Like, if you study the case, what happened is that 6 agents raided this guy's house, and he complained that it was against his Fourth Amendment or the Fifth Amendment. I don't know actually. The one that protects you against abusive searches. And actually, Bivens won. He won, you know. He won in the Supreme Court, and that's why it's a legal precedent now. But 6 unknown federal narcotics agent, like, they didn't know who it was. It wasn't in any like file or document anywhere. They didn't have their names or badge numbers. And I wonder, like, if the case had gone to trial and Bivens would get tried, like in a criminal court, like, who was going to testify? Were they going to take like 6 random people and have them like testify that they raided his house? Really, it was lost. The names were lost. Like, it's pretty ridiculous. I can't believe there are like that many federal narcotics agents in this county or in this region, I guess. And if he won, and I think he won, what was gonna happen? Like, they were gonna take 6 people at random in their agencies and have them pay him. That's a weird title. It should have been Biden versus 6 federal narcotics agent. I'm thinking maybe they didn't want to release their names, so they just put 6 unknown. Maybe it was shorter that way. I don't know. So the case we're gonna study today is Lorne Armstrong versus NBC Universal Inc. The most important thing to notice right now, apart from the fact it's a pro se. Pro se means, sorry about that, weak coffee. Pro se means by yourself, you know, you legally represent yourself, so you don't use a lawyer. And I can see why, you know. Lorne didn't exactly have money for a lawyer, which is, you know, pretty practical. It sucks that in order to affirm your rights and defend your rights in court, you pretty much need to be rich. You know, lawyers aren't cheap. I use quite a few, and the cheapest I ever found was $75 an hour, and you also had to pay the fees for the court documents and copies and stuff. So unless Lorne had at least $10,000, no lawyer was going to do anything. So he was kind of forced to do it by himself, or not at all. And when you look back at it, he shouldn't have done it at all. But of course, maybe there was a small chance Lorne could have won that lawsuit. Maybe a 1 in a million chance, 1 in a billion chance. And actually, when he filed that complaint and he actually started his lawsuit, Lorne didn't have enough money to pay the court fee, which is $350. So he filed in forma pauperis, which means free, pretty much. He basically told the court, I'm too poor to pay the fee. And the court said, no problem. We'll reduce the fee, but we're going to take money from your prisoners found, you know. When you're in jail, I didn't know that, but when you're in jail, you have kind of a small bank account there. And every time you work, you get paid like $1 per day, and that money goes into your prisoners found. So you can buy chocolate. I don't know. I don't know why you would need money in jail. Like, what? Honestly, if I went to jail and they say you're gonna work for $1 an hour, I wouldn't do it. Like, I would just say no. I don't really want to work. Like, I don't care what you do. Leave me alone. Like, leave me in my room. Then again, it depends on what they would ask me to do. But I don't know. I've never like done crimes, or I've never like. It's a totally new business, new field for me, like prison and stuff like that. And in my country, like prison are very different from the U.S. So I don't know how it works in the U.S. But if they said, for example, you're gonna work in the kitchen cooking for inmates and you're gonna be paid $1 per day, I would say no thanks. I wonder what they would do. Like, would they beat you? Would they beat your ass? Or, I don't know. I really don't know. But if they do beat your ass, then I guess it kind of ends up like, you know, the Nazis camp with the Jews, where they forced the Jew to work in the factories to build tanks for the army, for the Nazis. So I wonder what they do. If you refuse to work, I guess they just, well, from what I remember from the movies, they send you into solitary confinement. But if you're Lorne, you probably want to be in solitary anyway, so. So anyway, the first thing you need to notice, he had no lawyer. I have to assume no lawyer wanted to take his case, especially not pro bono. And I have to say this. One of the reasons I'm doing the Legal Mastermind series is that I have some legal experience. I have 1 year of law study. I know it's not much, but here, to become a lawyer, to pass the bar, it's only 3 years. You have to be in college for 3 years. And I did a third, and I had pretty good grades. I had A's on everything, unlike Lorne. Lorne got a D on this. More on that later. The reason I stopped the law wasn't because I stopped my law study wasn't because it didn't interest me. It was because it was getting tedious, and I did love studying the law, but I did love psychology and science and tons of other stuff. And I thought my time was better invested in some other activities. But I love the law, and I know the very minimum basis. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not like some kind of legal expert. Lorne is, but I know a little bit. I know enough to do a small analysis of what he wrote. And also, I'm not in the US, so yeah. But the US code is actually, if you study it, the US code is basically based, well, it's based on the common law system, basically. And when the US seceded from the England, they modified the legal system a little bit, but it's very similar to common law from England, which I studied. So it's kind of similar. So yeah, the big problem is that his lawsuit is handwritten. It's actually a complaint to be used for a lawsuit eventually. And Lorne did type like his lawsuit. And when he typed his lawsuit, it's funny because he forgot argument 8. So I guess he took his complaint and he formally typed it. And it looked like, the way he typed it, it looked like a cheap printer. Like, a cheap computer, or a typewriter, a cheap typewriter. And he actually forgot his argument 8, like he didn't even include it in the formal lawsuit. But this is a complaint, but it's actually addressed to the court. So the court is supposed to take the complaint, and eventually it's supposed to end up in a civil action, in a lawsuit. So although it's a complaint, it's not really a lawsuit because you don't serve the other party with that. The court does that. It's really a complaint. So it's quite, it's quite not bizarre, but it's quite confusing. Like, you're supposed to use this form for a complaint, but does it lead to a lawsuit automatically, or do you have to file separately? I guess it is filed separately by the clerk. Okay, so the lawsuit is handwritten. Already, I told you, I've never seen anyone with a pro se complaint win. Never. And I read hundreds of pro se complaints and lawsuits. I've never seen a pro se person win once. Not once. And I don't mean small claims. I mean real big lawsuits, with multi-millions amount. But the fact that it's a pro se prisoner, it's even worse. It's like one step lower. Pro se is bad. Pro se prisoner. It's a bad start already. Lorne should have gotten a lawyer, but again, no lawyer is going to take his case because he doesn't have a case. We'll see that later. And of course, he had no money. If he had a few millions, he could have afforded some kind of extreme lawyer. And you know what? If he had a lot of money, like he was rich, he might actually have won because his points are not absolutely and totally wrong. If you compare to the Texas thing where the lady who lost her pedophile brother, the prosecutor who killed himself, her sister sued, and she has quite a lawsuit. Like, of course, his brother killed himself, and it was more about police misconduct, not about NBC. But NBC ended up settling the case out of court. So had Lorne had a lot of money and some high-profile lawyers, he might have gotten a settlement out of court just to shine up. The legal system is unfair sometimes. Okay, so Lorne doesn't ask for a jury trial. I wonder why. When you do a civil rights action, always ask for a jury trial. If you don't ask for a jury trial, you're going to go in front of a judge. And going in front of a judge is a coin flip. You never know how the judge is going to react. You don't lose anything by asking for a jury trial. At worst, it will get denied, either because you don't have enough, you don't have enough a big lawsuit, it's not important, or it doesn't apply. I guess you have to pay extra when you check demand for a jury trial. I think you have to pay $100 extra, but come on, it's $100 and you're asking for 80 millions. Just pay it, Lorne. And if you cannot get a jury trial, it will get denied and it will go to a judge, or even better, a panel of 3 judges. So the fact that he doesn't ask for a jury trial is his first mistake. So now the case is confirmed. It will go in front of a judge. Sorry about that. Okay. Plaintiff, Lorne Armstrong, Luther Lockett Correctional Complex. And actually, one day I will analyze his handwriting. He has a beautiful handwriting, like very, very unique. Like his handwriting is pretty like different from everyone. The waveform is O, like it's kind of a spiral, like it's not like an O like this. It's and the K are pretty sexy. The E are more like overall. This is what I would say superficially about his handwriting, and I want to focus on the lawsuit. But what I would say is that Lorne has problem handwriting. Like you can see that he's really like trying to apply, and he's not a good handwriter. Like he doesn't have a fluid writing. The space between the letters are not consistent, and he's also somebody who write in the cursive, But now if he's making an effort to write in the regular letter, I guess. P.O. Box 6, Lagrange, Kentucky 40031. So we have his address in jail. That's pretty fucked up. Convicted. And you can feel the pain. Like when you had to check this, you can feel the pain. Like one thing you can notice about when I'm writing, I did study that. I studied a lot of things. I have a lot of interest. You have to study where he starts writing. So do you start writing your N with the small leg, or do you do that part to the curved leg and then the bar? One way to notice this is where there's more ink. So here you can see the left leg has more ink. So he took his pen and he did as opposed to do a stuck, a standard X or a check mark. So you can feel like he was really like trying not to think about the fact that he was convicted too much. Defendant, NBC Universal Inc. is employed as television broadcaster at NBC Universal Inc. Like the defendant, NBC Universal Inc. is employed at NBC Universal Inc. It's kind of a loop, It's an infinite loop. Like NBC Inc. is employed at NBC Inc. is employed at NBC Inc. is employed at NBC Inc. So it's kind of, that's the problem with, pre-formatted forms is that you have to fill the blank, You should have, I guess he hesitated. What am I gonna put? It's a company. It's not employed anywhere, and it's employed as a television broadcaster. Like the entire network is employed as a television broadcaster. It's not employed as a television broadcaster. It is a television broadcaster. So you could have cross employed. You should have wrote defendant NBC Universal Inc. is you cross the yes, is a television broadcaster, and you check that off, you cross that off. It looks kind of silly. Like if you're a judge, I bet the judge chuckled when he read that, Maybe he tittered, I don't know. The defendant is being sued in his, her individual or official capacity. Official capacity means, again, generally, but it means as part of a job. For example, if you get abused by a police officer, you don't sue the human being, you don't sue the person, you sue the police officer. So it's official capacity. In other words, you sue them as part of your job. So let's say Lorne had sued Chris Henson for some reason. I don't know why, but let's say he would have said defendant Chris Henson is employed as a journalist at NBC Universal. Lorne would have had to check official because he's not suing Chris Henson, the person. He's suing Chris Henson, the reporter, the journalist, the investigative journalist. He's suing him as part of his normal job. When you sue as individual, the person, if you lose, like if let's say you sued Chris Henson as individual, the case would have been thrown out most likely because it's not really, well, maybe it would have been, I don't know if it had been thrown out. Well, eventually it was thrown out, but if you sued Chris Henson individually and Chris Henson happens to lose, Chris Henson would be directly responsible for the cost. So you could like steal his house, like, put a lien of his bank account, a lien, I don't know. Official, however, if Chris Henson lost, NBC would have needed to cover the cost of the lawsuit, the settlement. And official also mean, we can have insurance, where for individual, it's more about, there is insurance for individual, but it's not the same context. Like if you insure, let's say you flood your house and you have somebody living below you, and you flood his apartment and you have a renter's insurance, so the insurance would cover it. But in this case, there wouldn't be any insurance because it's a bad decision and there's no insurance that covers what it's called. I did study insurance. I'm not joking. I did some studying of insurance, but no insurance is going to protect you against things that are not random. So if you do something, it's not random because you chose to do it. You know, Christensen chose to do the Dateline series. So there's no individual insurance for it. There might be an official insurance, as a company insurance. So that's why it's important. But here, Lorne is suing a company, so neither applies. Like, it's not individual and it's not official. So when you sue a company, that's the problem with pre-formatted forms. That's the problem. It's not individual, it's a company, and it's not official because, again, it's a company. You're just suing the company. And also, look at the X. This time, the X is normal. It's a normal X, unlike here. Again, that shows some, he was hesitating. He was uncomfortable with the X he had to sign, I guess. You see, there's a room for a lot of defendants, so Lorne could have added like a few people just at random. I mean, while you're at it, you might as well sue everybody that was involved. Christensen, the police. He might sue Kayla. Defendant Kayla Marie Armstrong is employed as a decoy at NPC. I would have died of laughter if he had put that. You sue perverted justice, maybe. There's a lot of room. Why stop with NBC, Lorne? You could have sued everybody on Earth, basically, because, everyone who watched the show, everyone who watched NBC has contributed because people watch the show and they watch the ads, and the ads are giving money to NBC, So everybody who watches NBC or has watches NBC in the past is responsible for your pain and suffering, my savior. Should have sued defendant every watcher of Dateline NBC. Have you begun other lawsuit in state or federal court dealing with the same facts involving the action? Yes. Again, Lorne here is gonna talk about his appeal. So Lorne did quite a few appeals he did quite a few legal procedures. Just a second. Drinking some weak coffee. It's so delicious. He sued, Lorne was convicted on a state charge, but also a federal statute, which is crossing borders to rape a kid. He couldn't just rape kids in Tennessee. He had to go rape kids in Kentucky too. And actually, the most severe sentence was for the federal charge. So he appealed his conviction, his state, on the state level and the federal level. And he also did like a ton of motion to clarify, motion to I don't know. I guess he really read those books like in jail, and he did every motion he could find, and so he did quite a few of them. But here, this is a civil lawsuit. It's not an appeal. It's not a criminal court. It's completely different. It is the same district, the District of Kentucky, but it's not at all the same. I was going to say chamber, but the same division of the Kentucky court. I don't know. I don't remember what the name was. I think it was the Western District. The district. Sorry about that. So when he said the same fact, I understand what he means. I mean, it's the facts stem from his arrest. So he says yes, but it's not actually correct because he should have put no. Like the way he presented our lawsuit in state or federal court dealing with the same fact involving his action. But his lawsuit here is going to be about invasion of privacy and all that garbage. So, yes, he did file a lawsuit with the same fact in a federal court. So technically speaking, he did. Technically say yes. If your answer to A is yes, describe the lawsuit in the space below. It's not really a lawsuit. Well, it is a legal action, but it's an appeal. It's not a civil action. Does it deal with the same fact? It deals with another facets of the fact. Instead of dealing, for example, his appeal to the Warren County District, I guess, his appeal is about the fact that basically, and we're going to study it one day, his appeal is about the fact that he pled guilty, but he wouldn't have pled guilty if he knew about entrapment. So basically what he's saying in his lawsuit, and as the judge explains it, and the judge from Warren County District Court, as the judge explains it, Lorne pretends that if there was no Kayla, Lorne pretends that if Kayla was a real child, he wouldn't have gotten caught and he wouldn't be on TV. That's what his appeal is about. Like basically saying, if Kayla was real, I wouldn't have been caught. That's fucking ridiculous. Like, yes, Lorne, yes, that's right. If Kayla was real, you probably wouldn't have been exposed on TV. You might have ended up marrying her. That's gross. But it happens, there's a lot of sexual child abuse, sexual abuse against children. And there are actually, that's something I talk about, the dark side of Lorne. There are some real world Lorne that end up doing what Lorne wanted to do. So that's the less funny part of it, But, of course, his appeal was thrown out. And that's what he's referring to. But again, it's not exactly the same fact, because here it's all about big bad NBC, while his appeal was about, how can I say it? It was about the decoy work, like the sting. Like if there was no sting, I wouldn't have gotten caught. So it's two different sets of fact from the same event. Commonwealth of Kentucky, docket number, the judge is Steve Wilson. And then this is funny. Type of case, for example, habeas corpus or civil right action. And I guess Lorne hesitated, like, I didn't file a civil rights action, so it must be the first, right? An habeas corpus case, or I would say not a lawsuit, but a habeas corpus request. On its most simple form, habeas corpus says that this facility doesn't have the right to hold me. In other words, it's not that the facility is detaining me illegally. Well, technically it is, but the facility is detaining me and it doesn't have the authority to detain me. And it can be very technical, and it can go on to some very precise points of the procedure. It can also be used for abuse in jail, meaning, for example, if you look at habeas corpus, is it habeas corpus? I have to go look. Well, that's my favorite music. I'm sorry about that. Habeas corpus. I believe it is. For example, I know people in Guantanamo Bay used it. Guantanamo Bay. I did read about. Yeah, let's see. The power to detain. So they said, for example, people at Guantanamo Bay sued with an habeas corpus saying that, Guantanamo Bay was not in the U.S. and they had no right to detain us because there's no law, there's no statute allowing them to detain us in Guantanamo Bay. And it's quite an interesting case. It's very complicated. And to chimpanzee used in research at the State University. Okay. Sorry, it was new. So that's the kind of habeas corpus. It's very, very rare, but it can also be used for prison abuse, I believe. I'm not sure. You have the body. Be brought to court whether or not that person is in prison lawfully and whether or not he should be released from custody. Okay, it's not about, there's another procedure that you can use. For example, let's say you get abused in jail. Let's say you don't get fed enough or you get beaten by guards. You can file another, I think. Okay, they give an example. Family law parent who has been denied custody of a child by a trial court may file habeas corpus petition. Okay, but there's also a procedure, I forgot the name, that let's say you get abused by guards, you can file for it. And you can actually get released. Like the court can say you were the victim under their custody of the jail. You were the victim of abuse. Because of that abuse, I order that you be your sentence be terminated and you be released immediately, or maybe parole. But I remember reading quite a few. Is it here? But typically, habeas corpus is exactly that. But Lawrence, when he talks about his appeal, it's definitely not habeas corpus, not even close. It's an appeal. It's a criminal appeal, or basically. And then he writes habeas corpus because he believes he has only two options. It's either that or that. So he doesn't know what to write. He's like, that was not civil's right, so it must be habeas corpus. And then he writes ineffective assistance of counsel, and that is something I have to analyze one day. What Lorne says basically is that my lawyer should have told me about the entrapment defense, because if I knew about that defense, I wouldn't have pled guilty. And I hope I'm not the only one to see a problem with that. That's like saying, yes, I plead guilty, I did the crime, And I guess you can say that you didn't admit it because you just signed a paper saying you're guilty. But from a de facto or from a realized perspective, when you plead guilty in front of the eyes of a court, it's basically saying, I did it. And it's imperfect because many people will plead guilty because they don't want to go to trial and they don't want to pay for a defense lawyer for the procedures, or they're just tired of it. But if you plead guilty, if you're a court, it means that you admit the crime, and there's no There are some appeals possible, like if you're like mentally retarded and you can show that you didn't understand what a guilty plea was, but it's pretty rare. So when you plead guilty and then you make an appeal and you say, if my lawyer was better, I wouldn't have pled guilty. I would have claimed it was entrapment. But it's kind of stupid. Like, his appeal is stupid because you admitted to doing it. You admitted to trying to rape a child. And now you're saying, well, yes, I was trying to rape a child, but if I knew that I could have pretended I wasn't trapped, I wouldn't have admitted it. That's really stupid. That's really weird. Like, it's bizarre. And his appeal was, of course, denied. And the judge says, oh, it's so funny. I have to show you one day what he said. But the judge said, it is not ineffective assistance for a lawyer to not recommend to perform a futile act. In other words, the judge says your lawyer was not ineffective, like he didn't waste his time because the defense that you wanted to present makes no sense. You were not entrapped, you idiot. Okay, I have to find it. Armstrong. I have to find it. Lorne Armstrong. I have to find it. Is that it? As appeal. Everybody save it later. On appeal, Armstrong reasserts that counsel was ineffective in failing to explore an entrapment defense and in failing to explain the consequences of the guilty plea. That could have been a good excuse. Like, if really your lawyer is that bad, you can appeal. He has apparently abandoned all other allegations as they are not presented to this court for review. However, in his brief, Armstrong has added a series of rambling and conclusory allegations and supporting evidence which were not presented to trial court. It is axiomatic that a party may not feed one kind of worms to the trial judge and another to the appellate's court. So, and then later he says, you see, he explains the criteria for finding an appeal of a guilty plea. Armstrong first alleges the trial counsel was ineffective in failing to implore an entrapment defense. His argument is somewhat difficult to follow, is internally inconsistent, and varies greatly from the argument presented to the trial court. Armstrong first avers counsel never informed him of the existence of such a defense, followed by an allegation counsel failed to adequately explore the potential of using the defense, then shift to an allegation that counsel only determined the entrapment defense did not apply. You know, that's a bad start. If you read that in a judgment, you know you're fucked. And ultimately, contents, he told counsel repeatedly that he figured it would be better for a defense of entrapment. Before the trial court, he argued that counsel failed to inform him of the existence of the defense. The trial court determined Armstrong was not entitled to relief as he failed to show the outcome of the case would have been different had counsel informed him of the possibility of an entrapment defense. It examined the record and found the defense, even if available, would have been unsuccessfully under the plain language of Kentucky regulation and statutes 505.0122 section A, as the Commonwealth merely afforded Armstrong the opportunity to commit an offense. In other words, what he says here, what the judge says here, he says it wasn't entrapment, because entrapment is a fixed legal definition. It doesn't suffice to, again, that's my understanding in very basis, and I'm not a lawyer, but for an entrapment defense, it's not enough to offer the possibility of committing a crime. So let's say that let's say that all the security agent leaves a bank and it's alone, and you say, well, there's no security, I might as well rob the bank. And then you go inside and you rob the bank and you get caught, like when you get out. You cannot say, well, I wasn't trapped because I saw every guard leaving the house and I saw the door was open, so I decided to go rob the bank, which is basically what Lorne did. You know, he said I wasn't trapped, but basically there was a child online and he tried to rape that child, so it wasn't entrapped. In order to get entrapped, you need to have police misconduct, meaning that misconduct, meaning the police must be pressurizing you to commit a crime. So if they come to you and they show a bag of drug and they say, hey, you want to buy it? Buy this drug, buy it. Now you don't offer an opportunity for drug, you offer all the criteria for drug, like you're really like entrapping a person. Or best example, let's say police hires a kid, and the kid goes in front of an alcohol store and they ask you like, hey, do you want to buy alcohol for me? That, again, that could be construed as entrapment. Could be, depending on the circumstances. Not an expert, but in Lorne's case, it is clearly not entrapment. And then he says, contrary to his vehement argument, and that's well described, like it's very poetic. That's what he says. Nothing in the record indicates Armstrong was induced or coerced into committing a criminal act by a public servant or its ostensible agent. Ostensible means somebody that is noticeably a police officer. And then a bit later he explained, I want to find it. Was correct to summarily deny Armstrong for relief on this bald and unsupported allegation of error. On this bald allegation. But that's actually the appeal to his appeal. Like he tried to get a new trial for, yeah, that's the appeal for his first. So that wasn't the case I was looking for. Like Lorne has so many lawsuits. Like, I cannot keep up with it. Direct appeal, we have that in our legal system too. And the plea argument, the change of plea transcript, and it's actually a pretty complex case. Lorne Armstrong, maybe here I can find it. Opinion affirming, nope, that's you see here, that's in 2014. So Lorne's lawsuit are still ongoing, I guess. For the warrant of his pro se, the law we affirm. So that's from 2011. That's the one I was looking at. It is not. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Even if assuming, like let's assume the counsel failed to inform him of the existence of an entrapment defense, such a defense would have clearly been futile, and we therefore cannot discern any prejudice to Armstrong by counsel alleged deficient performance. It is not ineffective assistance of counsel to fail to perform a futile act. QED, Lorne. You didn't have ineffective assistance of counsel because your counsel, it is not inefficient assistance to fail to perform a futile act. And then he says, disposition still pending. You'll see why here. I also did the same with my federal case, but was pro se and got turned down. Yeah, you're going to have bad news on the state too. It was at the same time I began my state case that I began my federal habeas corpus. So now he seemed convinced that he filed the habeas corpus. And also it's poetic, it was at the same time I began my state case that I began my federal habeas corpus. It's such well written. Compare that to the lawsuit you just saw when he goes with vehement and he says inconsistent and difficult to follow and all. He says, no, Lorne right, it was at the same time I began my state case that I began my federal habeas corpus. You should have fixed that and wrote, I began my federal habeas corpus at the same time I submitted my state case. That would have been clearer. And then he said, approximate date of filing lawsuit, October, November 2009. He didn't lose any time, Lorne went to jail in 2000. He was sentenced, in 2008. 1 year later, he was already like filling every appeal he could put his hands on, Okay, now we get to the statement of claims, but we're going to do that in part 2 of the video. Talk to you soon.